Americans are working harder than ever before. So why do so many feel like they're falling behind? In 1979, the average American worker put in about 38 hours a week and earned a wage that could reasonably support a family. Fast forward to today, many are clocking similar or even longer hours, yet financial security remains elusive. The cost of living has skyrocketed, wage growth has stagnated, and for millions, the American dream feels increasingly out of reach. This isn't just a numbers problem, it's a lived reality. Reddit threads like r anti-work and r personal finance are flooded with people venting about juggling multiple jobs, surviving paycheck to paycheck, or feeling trapped in a cycle that leaves little time for rest or joy. YouTube comments on financial advice videos often echo the same sentiment. I'm doing everything right, so why am I still broke? This isn't about laziness, it's about a system that seems fundamentally misaligned. While corporate profits soar and CEO salaries balloon, many workers say they've never felt poorer or more exhausted. In this video, we'll explore what's driving this disparity. Why are millions of Americans working more but getting less in return? We'll dive into the numbers, the human stories, and the overlooked forces reshaping labor in the US. And more importantly, we'll ask, when did hard work stop paying off? And what does that mean for the future of work in America? Let's start with a simple but jarring truth. Wages have barely budged in decades. Adjusted for inflation, the average hourly wage in the US has increased by just 17% since 1979. Meanwhile, worker productivity has surged by over 60%. So where did all that extra value go? Not to the workers. Between 1979 and 2023, the Economic Policy Institute reports that income gains overwhelmingly favored the top 1%, whose earnings grew by more than 200%, while the bottom 90% saw only modest increases. During this same time, the federal minimum wage lost over 30% of its value in real dollars. Take a look at Walmart. The company raked in over $600 billion in revenue in 2023, yet many of its employees still rely on government assistance to make ends meet. Or consider McDonald's, one of the most profitable fast food chains in the world, where thousands of workers have joined strikes demanding a $15 minimum wage for over a decade. Meanwhile, CEO pay has exploded. In 1965, the average CEO earned 20 times more than the average worker. By 2022, that number was closer to 400 times. This disparity isn't just a statistic, it shapes real lives. On Reddit's r/career guidance, one user wrote, "I got a college degree, did internships, followed the rules. Now I'm 32, renting a room with roommates, no savings, and still living paycheck to paycheck." Even middle-class jobs that once offered upward mobility, like teaching, nursing, or public service, are increasingly failing to keep up with inflation. Many workers in these professions now report side hustling just to stay afloat. And it's not just about wages. Employers have increasingly shifted costs to workers. Healthcare premiums, retirement planning, and even office equipment for remote jobs are now often the worker's responsibility. In essence, the social contract has been rewritten, but most people never got a say in the new terms. There's another side to this story, the cultural shift. Over the past 2 decades, we've seen the rise of hustle culture, the idea that your worth is measured by your output, and that working nonstop is a badge of honor. But who does this narrative really serve? From Uber to DoorDash to Fiverr, millions of Americans have turned to gig work to fill the gaps left by traditional employment. According to a 2024 Pew study, nearly 40% of working-age Americans now participate in the gig economy in some form. At first glance, the promise of flexibility and independence seems empowering, but the reality is often far grimmer. Gig workers typically don't receive benefits, sick leave, or job security. A 2023 study from the Brookings Institution found that most gig workers earn less than $15 an hour after expenses. YouTube is filled with so-called side hustle success videos promising $10,000 a month in passive income. But look into the comment sections and a different story emerges. "I tried 5 side hustles and still barely make rent. I'm exhausted. This isn't freedom, it's survival." Even salaried professionals are feeling the squeeze. The soft work of the digital era, emails, meetings, managing online platforms, has become invisible labor, often performed after hours and without recognition. One LinkedIn user lamented, "My 9 to 5 is more like 8 to 8. I spend my weekends recovering from work I didn't get paid extra for." And while the economy boasts record low unemployment rates, many of those jobs are part-time, precarious, or underpaid. The Bureau of Labor Statistics notes a growing number of Americans who are employed, but still below the poverty line. In a particularly viral Reddit post, one user said, "I work 50 hours a week between 2 jobs and still had to borrow money to fix my car. I'm not lazy, I'm just tired." So why does the myth of the hustle persist? Because it offers hope in a hopeless system. If you just work harder, smarter, longer, you might make it. The truth is, many are already doing all those things and still falling short. It's not just about how much you earn, it's about how much everything costs. Over the last 20 years, wages have grown modestly, but housing, healthcare, education, childcare, those costs have exploded. From 2000 to 2023, the average rent in the US increased by over 120%, placing a significant strain on household budgets. During the same period, healthcare premiums tripled, making medical coverage increasingly unaffordable for many families. Additionally, the average college tuition at public universities more than doubled, saddling students and their families with unprecedented levels of debt. Meanwhile, the median household income has risen only 20% in real terms. It's no wonder 60% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck, according to Lending Club's 2024 report. And it's not just low-income earners. Over 45% of those making $100,000 or more also report financial insecurity. Student loan debt has surpassed $1.7 trillion. Medical debt remains the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the US. Even basic necessities like groceries and utilities have become pain points. In early 2024, Reddit users reported canceling dental appointments and skipping meals just to cover monthly bills. And credit cards, they're becoming lifelines. American household credit card debt hit a record $1.13 trillion in 2023. Many Reddit threads and YouTube vloggers have started documenting what they call stealth poverty, where someone may look middle class on the outside, but is quietly drowning in debt, stress, and burnout. This structural squeeze hits especially hard for younger generations. Millennials and Gen Z entered adulthood with high debt, precarious job markets, and soaring costs of living. Many now joke, half seriously, about never retiring, never owning a home, never having children. But these aren't just jokes. They're reflections of a fundamental shift. For the first time in modern history, younger Americans are statistically worse off than their parents. Economists call it downward mobility. But to many, it just feels like being the future. So where does all this leave us? Millions of Americans are working longer hours, juggling multiple jobs, side hustles, and gig work, yet finding themselves with less buying power, fewer benefits, and more stress than ever before. The promise of the American dream, that hard work leads to prosperity, feels increasingly like a myth. What we're witnessing isn't just economic, it's existential. It's a fraying of trust in the systems that once held society together, that employers would reward loyalty, that education would lead to opportunity, that a job would offer stability. Instead, many feel stuck in survival mode. But there is a growing awareness and resistance. Workers are unionizing, speaking out on platforms like Reddit and TikTok, and challenging the status quo. Rise of movements like anti-work and quiet quitting aren't about laziness. They're about reclaiming dignity in a system that has lost balance. The question now isn't just how we got here, it's where we go from here. Can we build a future where work actually works for people? Where time, energy, and effort are met with fair compensation and security? Because one thing is clear, Americans aren't afraid of hard work, but they're asking, finally and forcefully, shouldn't that work count for something?